that's not rolled out yet, is it?
Will be released to the web store for approval, hopefully this week.
So we got some alpha on here.
Yeah, this is the first time where we're kind of doing marketing and talking about it, which is cool.
We could just dive into some features. I think you wanted to show us some stuff. All right, thank you for tuning into the Teach Me DeFi podcast. Another episode in English today, even though we're generally a German podcast. And today we got Jonathan here, co-founder of Talisman. Hi, mate. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. Dankeschön.
Nice. That's funny. Bill started it off with a German phrase as well last week.
Yeah, I'll quickly run out of German though if we do anymore.
All right. So we'll keep it the same way. I kept it with Bill, which was next episode in German with you.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll have to practice.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, sweet. I'm excited to talk about Talisman and wallets and everything. I'd say let's just jump right in. Maybe you just give us a short intro about yourself and Talisman.
Yeah, of course. I'm Jonathan. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of Talisman. We've been building Talisman together as a team since 2021. Prior to that, we were running a company called FlexStaps, which was like a Web3 venture studio services business. We were a little bit between a dev shop and a fund. And as a part of that, we would kind of take on projects, maybe like a 3-month duration. And kind of be the technical co-founders for a project for that period of time. And then eventually we'll tell them to kind of grow their own wings and hire their own tech team. And we would rinse and repeat. But when we were running that, we kind of came across the opportunity to build a wallet for the substrate and Polkadot ecosystem. Right. We had built lots of wallets and kind of user experience style applications prior to that. And we were always interested in Polkadot, having run some Polkadot events in like November of 2018 in Melbourne.
Oh, wow.
So we were always interested in like the intersection of wallets and Polkadot, but had never really dived in. So when the opportunity came to build a wallet extension and a web dashboard for the Polkadot ecosystem in maybe April 2021, we took a couple of months to deliberate, and then I think we were off to the races in around June or July. And the first product we shipped was a dashboard to manage your crowd loans, which are happening later that year.
So you had a dashboard for managing crowd loans that you made?
Yeah. Oh. The intention of Talisman was always to build a wallet for the Polkadot ecosystem. But when we first sat down and thought about the problem, we kind of looked at the role of a wallet in 2 parts. The first part was as like a traditional key store and a signing device. The requirements there are to be really safe, really secure. Like you cannot muck about with kind of moving fast and breaking things with that kind of product. Yeah. And the other side of kind of building a wallet is allowing the opportunities that are most relevant in the ecosystem to be kind of presented to the user in a quick and iterative way. The separation is a little bit like storing your funds and spending your funds. Like those are the 2 roles of a wallet. So we very quickly split up our attention between 2 products. Firstly is that key store and signing device, which is now the Talisman browser extension. And secondly is a platform to kind of easily and seamlessly present relevant opportunities in the Polkadot ecosystem. And that's the Talisman portal, which is available at app.talisman.xyz. And I guess the first thing we had put there was the ability to participate in crowd loans in late 2021. But we've since kind of added lots of things there, like a rich portfolio management experience, the ability to move your funds between chains. And when nomination pools came out, we kind of put together a 1-click staking dashboard for the chains that supported nomination pools. And that's been really successful so far.
All right, interesting. All right, you're getting in the weeds there already.
Okay.
with those things, I like it. And we'll show off some of the features in a bit as well. That'll be cool for viewers to see this, especially for the ones who aren't familiar with Talisman yet. But maybe for a more general question for the start, there's been like an influx of wallets. There's many different wallets around, obviously focused on different blockchains and ecosystems and all. Now, what sets Talisman Wallet apart from its competitors? And also, like, why should users choose Talisman over other options, so to say?
Yeah, Talisman's, I suppose, like product development philosophy is reasonably simple. We're here to provide kind of a really rich and seamless self-custody experience for users, where the users can kind of be in control of their own funds and their own key pairs in a way that's secure, but also in a way that's usable and doesn't necessarily compromise on the day-to-day kind of user flows and like seamlessness of the actions that they're participating in. And that's quite a hard kind of Venn diagram to put together, where often the centralized services to custody your funds are really seamless in the way that you would expect a Web2 product to be. So if you put funds on a centralized exchange or kind of a custodian, they can offer a really seamless onboarding experience with a username and a password. You can forget your password if you want. It's something that your kind of non-crypto native peers would kind of be able to pick up and use quite intuitively. But of course, there's a lot of drawbacks to that. When something like the FTX explosion happens, and suddenly it's not necessarily the safest place to keep your funds, and it's not in keeping with the kind of internet that we want to build as a part of Web3. So the challenge, I suppose, for Talisman and what we think sets us apart is building a product that looks and feels like an internet product should in the year 2023. It should be seamless. It should be intuitive to use. It should kind of have no rough edges that you would expect to see or that are common to see with early stage technology. But it should kind of keep close to its heart principles of self-custody, permissionlessness, and decentralization. So that's what we've set out to build with Talisman. It's kind of a better way to use Web3. And I hope when I kind of demo some of the stuff we've been working on recently that kind of comes through. But really that's the value proposition here, is that it's a way to use Web3 that is as good as any alternative, centralized or decentralized, but it's kind of totally self-custody, and the user is in control of how they are setting up their key pairs.
Right. So you do have a focus on making things simple, but at the same time to keep it secure as well.
Yeah, it's critical. This is the vision of Web3. When Gav wrote his blog post in 2014 of like, what is Web3? There were kind of some core principles that I think it was clear that we needed to kind of not deviate from when we're essentially re-engineering the internet over the principles of kind of code is law and self-custody. And so it's important that we don't kind of deviate too far from that and actually just improve what those tools look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's crucial. And also, you guys came into the ecosystem at a time where I think UX was a big topic, and a lot of people were struggling with polka.js, that wallet, even though obviously it's very powerful for more developer-minded people. But I guess the more the normies, so to say, were struggling. I think some people probably maybe left the ecosystem as well during that time. And then that was kind of like, well, to me, it was kind of very refreshing to use the Talisman wallet then, because it felt streamlined, simple, and also it was kind of playful because you had some these images and kind of like storytelling around it. So that was kind of cool how you started up.
Yeah, I guess I got to pay respects to polka.js because it is a really amazing tool, and it kind of helped bootstrap the ecosystem for so long, and so much of the ecosystem still relies on it. But yeah, I don't suppose it was the most approachable tool for a lot of kind of newcomers to the ecosystem that just wanted to find out kind of what is the Polkadot network about, how can I kind of use what features are currently available, and set myself up to maybe use some of the parachains when they go live. Polkadot.js maybe just wasn't that kind of polished product company level product that we would want in the ecosystem. So we were happy to fulfill that role and do it in our own way, like you said, with these kind of unique art style. That it was actually an attempt to represent the ecosystem in a series of illustrations. So if you look at some of the art, you'll find kind of little artifacts that pertain to a particular parachain or a particular feature of the Polkadot network. We thought that visual identity was something that was missing as well, and something that we could bring to the ecosystem.
Ah, that's great. Yeah. And the Powerverse and stuff. Yeah. Now that you say it, it all kind of like ties together into the ecosystem.
The Powerverse is kind of funny. We just thought Polkadot had a naming kind of problem where any attempt to kind of draw a circle around what Polkadot was and give it a name was a little bit cumbersome or like nerdy. So I think people were calling it Dot-sama or Polka-sama. Some people call it the Polkadot ecosystem. And it was really hard to kind of draw a line around the relay chain or the two relay chains and all of their respective parachains and say, you know what, this is Polkadot. This is really the whole ecosystem in a nutshell. So we thought, you know, what would we call it if we had to start from scratch? And my co-founder Agile kind of thought of the name Paraverse, this universe of parachains and parathreads, I suppose, was the idea. And that was the branding that we started to push onto the ecosystem, just because we thought it was a nice alternative for Polkadot.
Sweet. Yeah, for sure. Gives it a bit of a sci-fi feel as well. I like it. No, cool. So maybe we just, in order to keep it less abstract now, we could just dive into some features. I think you wanted to show us some stuff. So we could just like take a look. Yeah,
of course. Before I dive into kind of screen sharing and mucking around with the features, it's probably worth doing the how did we get to this point explanation, where Talisman, I suppose it started with this split between two products. Firstly, the web portal, which is accessible via any wallet that you have, and it's kind of a move fast and break things kind of a product where we can really apply a high-paced product iteration loop to that interface. And then we had the move slowly and be very careful key pair store and signer, which was the Talisman extension and the wallet that a lot of people use today. And that product really started out as something which looked and felt a little bit like MetaMask, but for substrate and dark mode, especially with the account management experience. You know, you would open Talisman and there would be a key pair created for you, or you might have imported a seed yourself, but generally you would kind of create a seed and then the key pair is there for you. And then the path which you would kind of create new accounts was predefined. You couldn't really do much beyond that. And then, you know, we very quickly added support for Ledger app accounts. And then later that year, kind of the whole Ethereum environment. And that was another key pair that was created for you. So we felt we were kind of funneling users into a particular way of using Talisman quite early on. In a way that MetaMask and kind of most other Web3 wallets funneled users into saying, okay, we've created an account for you, here it is, import something else if you created elsewhere. And it was maybe a little bit restrictive. And in the ethos of self-custody and the user having ultimate control over what their accounts are doing and kind of the permissions they have at all times, and as well as what the account structure is, we always wanted to move to a point that's perhaps a little bit more more versatile, where the user can really design their own kind of account structure and implement that inside of Talisman. So we've released a few builds recently that have kind of built up to this, but this week, kind of we're 26th of September now. We should be releasing for approval on the web store version 1.19.0, which is like the final kind of set of features for this idea of a really versatile and feature-rich account management experience inside of Talisman.
Okay.
So to illustrate this, I might share my screen.
Sounds good, yeah.
And I've just got a fresh install of the build that will be submitted to the Chrome store and to the Firefox store very quickly. It says Canary up here because we have this process of releasing a Canary build of the extension to our close community before
Where
it
might
goes
that
into
expression
public.
come from?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of borrowed that from Kusama, but it's a really excellent software development practice, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we really kind of lean heavily on the Talisman community to be a part of the product development process. And as a part of that, it's kind of creating a Canary version of the wallet each time we do a release, giving it to community members that want to do some user testing. And then they can poke holes in it and make sure that when the public version of Talisman is released, it's battle tested and ready for action. Because I think that's the kind of conservative software development approach you should be taking with a self-custody wallet like this.
Yeah, that's sensible. Yeah.
Yeah. But kind of going back to what I was saying, we really wanted to move away from this kind of pattern of funneling users into key pairs and kind of moving them down a route where they're not really deciding what self-custody and what account kind of setup they're creating. It's something that's kind of provided for them and they have to learn it rather than onboarding at their own pace and doing something that's a little bit more considered. But that's all going to change when this release goes live. And you'll see on the next screen where once you set up a password, and you should set a stronger password than I have here. I'm just kind of doing this for a demo purpose.
So no 1, 2, 3, 4. That's no good.
Yeah, it should be rated as strong on our little password.
All right.
Password thing. But I've just got a fresh build here, and then you can opt in or opt out to analytics depending on your preferences. But we'll opt out for now. And then straight away, when you onboard into Talisman, you can essentially create any type of account you like. This is kind of the old / default option that we used to kind of enforce every user do, which is to create a new seed phrase, and then they would kind of see the first account derived from that seed phrase as their first substrate account inside of Talisman. You can also import an account that you've had previously from either another version of Talisman on a different browser or a different wallet that you're migrating from. This can be a JSON file or your seed phrase. Or you can connect an account that's managed on an external device. So that's a Ledger device if you have accounts on that hardware wallet, a Decent device if you're a user of the Decent biometric wallet. That's mainly in the Korean market, and that's a recent integration.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And if you're using Parity Signer or the rebranded Polkadot Vault air-gapped mobile application, then you can import an account there. And if you don't have an account that you want to kind of put into Talisman's kind of state straight away, as something that you can kind of sign with when you connect to applications, you can also just paste a watched address and use Talisman as like a portfolio management tool. So this is something which we hope is as seamless as as possible, and the user isn't really noticing a lot of the engineering work that went on behind the scenes. But this was quite a decent refactor of Talisman to make sure that the user authentication and kind of the way in which you unlock the wallet and kind of all your accounts is as seamless as possible. But this is now probably the most versatile and definitely the most feature-rich account management experience that you can have inside Substrate, and it probably stands on its own two legs when you compare it to wallets and other ecosystems, just in terms of the options that are available to a user when they are creating accounts, and the way in which they can manage those when they are onboarded.
One quick question about it, because I had that question yesterday. I wanted to use my ledger with an extension on Moonbeam, and I just saw, I wasn't sure if Talisman could do that yet, so this was something where I would default back to MetaMask for. But I just saw now that you had the option ledger, and it said Polkadot and Ethereum accounts. So can you now also use EVM networks with a ledger in Talisman? That
should have been live for a while. So maybe we have to do some user testing or something like that. But yeah, any networks that are supported inside of Talisman, if there's like a corresponding ledger application, you should be able to connect that through and sign transactions.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, with the EVM, there's sometimes some kind of clashing with MetaMask because of the way we inject into the dApp. So we'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, what I usually do, I just disable MetaMask in the browser extension window. So otherwise, sometimes Talisman pops up, sometimes MetaMask when I go on a website.
Yeah, I do that too. But really, if you have both enabled, it's like a race condition. Whichever wallet kind of presents itself to the dApp first, the dApp will attempt to connect to. Right. So there needs to be some improvements there. But luckily, there's an Ethereum improvement proposal. I think it's EIP 6963 that aims to make this kind of problem a little bit more smooth. And that's something that Talisman will be integrating with whenever it's ready.
All right, cool.
But I've kind of done what chefs on cooking programs do, where they show you the recipe of like how to create it, and then they say, "And here's a dish that I made earlier, in case it needs some time in the oven or something." And I just prepared.
Show us the dish, Jonathan. Show us the dish.
But here is an example that I cooked up earlier, right. and I've just created kind of a fresh install of the new version of Talisman and loaded some different accounts inside there to maybe illustrate some of the rich account management tools that we've got in place.
Right.
So this will show up in both the pop-up and the full screen view. But if I go to my list of accounts, you can see that straight away I have kind of two accounts as kind of, let's say, uncategorized or global or general. Firstly is an account that I use as like something that's associated with my public identity to vote on proposals and participate in kind of governance discussions. Mm-hmm. I also have an account that I created with a fresh seed phrase earlier this month for kind of illustrating this purpose. And I would be able to consistently kind of do this again. So if I wanted to create another fresh seed, I would be able to do that inside of Talisman and kind of have that option available to me at all times, which I think is reasonably useful for people that want to have a little bit more of a complex arrangement of key pairs and don't necessarily want a new account to be associated to a seed phrase they previously controlled. They want it as something where their concerns are totally separated so they can manage security in the way that they choose. So that's something that's kind of new and quite important, I think.
Yeah, so just to summarize that, so far I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so far you could create a new wallet address here, but it would be associated to the same seed phrase. But now you can create a new wallet address that is associated with a totally new seed phrase. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And this is quite important because the seed phrase is the tool that you use to back up your account. And if you, let's say you had like a primary account that you already owned, derived off of a particular seed phrase, and you treated it with like a certain level of a security mindset. You only use this account rarely. You are very careful on the dApps that you connected to, and you kept the seed phrase in a particular location. If you then wanted to create an account that in your mind and in the way that you wanted to use it had a slightly different, or maybe let's say lower level of security that you required for that purpose, maybe it was just to test out a dApp that you weren't super confident in, or just kind of test out a new network, something like that. And you didn't necessarily care as much about the security of this seed phrase, or maybe it was something that you cared more about because you're going to move some different funds too. Right. It was a big limitation of a lot of Web3 wallets to have these kind of subsequent accounts derived from the same seed phrase, where the backup device, the really important contingency plan and kind of ground truth of your self-custody arrangement was the same, and you might find yourself in a position where, even though they were different accounts for different purposes, they shared the same secret, and that was something that really, in an ideal world, would be like a concern that was separated.
Right, and can you still view these different seed phrases in the wallet after typing in a password? Like how did you deal with the added complexity, so to say, of having several seed phrases possibly?
Yeah, so it's quite simple. If I go to add account, I can kind of create a new account and then select from which seed phrase it is like derived from. So if I want to create a new Polkadot account, I can see here that I've got a few seed phrases. One seed phrase, which is the one I kind of created earlier this month. I have another seed phrase inside of the wallet, which is used to sign transactions or like sign metadata that I send to my Polkadot Vault wallet. This is maybe a little bit of a caveat, so we won't go down that road for now. But these are the two seed phrases that are currently inside of Talisman. And I could choose to derive an account or my fresh account from either one of these if I wanted to kind of manage my accounts in that way and kind of inherit the security kind of arrangement from those particular seed phrases that already exist. Or if I really want to separate concerns between the accounts I already have and the account I'm about to create, and really kind of draw a hard line between the secrets that they use to be backed up, then I can create a new recovery phrase inside of Talisman, and that will be stored inside of the state. I can call this testy test, and I can kind of select, this is a reasonably new addition, a 24-word seed phrase if I wanted some more entropy and randomness, or just a 12-word seed phrase if I was looking for something a little bit easier to kind of manage myself.
Right, that's really cool. Also, you could see that how many, I just saw in the pop-up, how many accounts are associated with which seed phrase. Can you also see like exactly which ones are associated with which seed phrase? Is there also
not in this UI, but one way that you might be able to manage that state and kind of keep track of that yourself is actually in a new feature that we've shipped recently, which is the ability to group your accounts into different folders. So in this kind of test demo version of Talisman that I have installed, I have two accounts that are kind of outside of folders, but then I've also created 3 folders for myself to kind of organize the the different key pairs inside of my wallet. So I've got a couple of accounts that are empty but imported from different offline devices, one from a ledger and one from Polkadot Vault. I have grouped together a few accounts that I use for kind of development of Talisman when we're testing out support for different tokens and transaction types, for example. And here I've just got an account that I use for testnets. But really, I would be able to kind of structure these categories in any way that I like, so that I can have a very clear and coherent picture of how I have my self-custody accounts arranged inside of Talisman. So one way I might use this is as you suggested, to say, these are the accounts derived from seed number 1, where I have a really conservative approach to security. These are the accounts derived from seed number 2 and seed number 3 and so forth, and kind of group those together inside of the account management screen here.
That's really cool. I mean, it is a fairly simple, well, in terms of UI, fairly simple thing with the folders, but it goes a long way, because I think my Talisman wallet, there's like loads of addresses or accounts, and it's a mess at the moment. So if I could organize it more in folders, I think that would be really, really nice.
But it's something that's kind of come out of just user testing. We spoke to a lot of users, and we found out that the way in which they're managing their accounts inside of both Substrate and the Ethereum environments is just getting more and more complex. Kind of a pertinent example is people that are doing airdrop farming, kind of creating dozens and dozens of accounts and having to manage that. And it's not really possible in basically any wallet at the moment. So we're really pleased to help kind of facilitate not just that use case, but any use case that a user might need. For example, I've got the dev wallets that are good to separate out. Others might have wallets that are associated with a DAO or a group that they're a part of because they're a signer on a multi-sig, and they want to have those in a particular part of the UI. And those that are outside of that in a different part. So we're really pleased with it. And you can get as granular as you like. It's as usable as Talisman has always been in terms of seamlessness and the number of steps it takes to create accounts and perform actions. But if you did want to be a little bit more of an advanced user and customize things, there's an option to specify your derivation path if that is something that you're interested in doing as well.
Yeah, that's lovely. So far, you had to kind of use the name that you give individual accounts to organize yourself a bit. To say maybe like, I don't know, Ethereum XYZ wallet A, B, C or whatever. So yeah, that's really helpful. Cool.
Yeah. Hopefully it's like another step towards, I suppose, the vision of Talisman that I was explaining earlier with the goal to be provide a self-custodied and kind of Web3 native, or like in keeping with the Web3 ideals, provide a product that adheres to that, but that stands up to any Web2 product that people would expect to be using in 2023. So I think this is a really nice step towards that. Like,
sweet.
If you were to say.
And also, so that's not rolled out yet, is it? Or
so we've been rolling out this, vision in several builds. Folders is live at the moment, but the ability to have multiple seed phrases and that updated onboarding screen to match that fact will be released to the web store for approval, hopefully this week.
Okay, lovely, cool. So we got some alpha on here.
Yeah, this is the first time we're kind of doing marketing and talking about it, which is cool.
Awesome.
One tidbit, and this isn't necessarily like alpha or anything like that, but it kind of illustrates how we, the team, perceive this change, is that we've been debating whether to call this version 1.19.0 and kind of keep with proper versioning practices, or just call it Talisman 2.0. And have it as like the 2.0, because we think it's a really big change.
I'm all for Talisman 2.0. Last week we had Polkadot 2.0. This week we got Talisman 2.0. We stick with the theme. I love it. It's decided.
Yeah. Man, it'll feel like 2.0, but I think we're going to do proper software versioning and keep it as 19.0.
God damn it. All about security these days. Yeah. No, that's lovely. It's really interesting to see these features. And if we stick with that theme in terms of thinking about features, what are other things that are interesting that you guys are thinking about? Just some things that come to my mind right now would be things like account abstraction is being discussed a lot in the Ethereum environment. There's fiat on and off ramps that are integrated in wallets. In terms of the Polkadot ecosystem, what about like cross-chain swaps even inside the wallet or in your web app? Can you tell me a bit about this stuff?
Yeah, account abstraction is a really interesting one because it's kind of directionally very similar to what we're trying to achieve with Talisman, where the user can set up their accounts in a way in which they choose rather than a way in which is dictated by the wallet provider. And account abstraction has really, like, at least in Ethereum, opened the floodgates in terms of what's possible for a wallet to ship with. Where previously you had to just have a regular key pair and a smart contract wallet where you can bake in additional functionality wasn't necessarily given the same level of permission by the network. But with account abstraction, you can have a smart contract wallet with kind of additional functionality baked in that behaves in the same way as a regular account when you submit transactions to the network. And that's really exciting. We've seen like ZK wallets pop up and kind of social recovery baked into a smart contract wallet in a really native way. And we support the EVM at Talisman. So it's definitely a direction we can head into. And I'm kind of quite excited about both that and intents as kind of primitives inside of Ethereum that wallets can explode into. But there's also some possibility for an account abstraction similar experience inside of the substrate ecosystem where things like the proxy and multi-sig palettes, they're a little bit like account abstraction before account abstraction even existed on Ethereum, but it's been in substrate for ages. Right. That wallets like Talisman can kind of pick up and use to build a really amazing product. The only thing is they're not necessarily multi-chain native, where you need to set up a proxy account on one chain and then do it again on another chain. And that's a little bit challenging when you're dealing with lots of parachains. But yeah, I think both in the substrate and Ethereum ecosystems, we should see a little bit of a shift away from this, like, I just have a seed phrase and some accounts and that's how I interact with the network type model, and into a little bit more feature-rich a feature-rich product offering where people are creating wallets that have some usability and some security kind of baked in.
Right. So could you possibly have wallets that you can use or addresses where you don't have to store a seed phrase and think about that? Or
yes. There are services that do this at the moment, like Web3 Auth. This is like a semi-custody kind of solution, which gives you part of the secret and they store part of the secret. And then you combine together when you want to sign a transaction. And the user experience is very much like you don't have a seed phrase because you just use like a social login or some other means to access your part of the secret. But that's again, it's like... it's not necessarily totally self-custody and you're locked into that arrangement for that account moving forward. So something which might be a little bit more attractive or just versatile and allows the user to kind of implement what they choose is the idea of a keyless account, where you have an account on the chain, it has an address and you can set identities and kind of perform transactions from it, and it holds assets like any other account, but there is no associated seed phrase or no associated private key. So you might ask, how do I sign transactions from this thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
And in that case, you kind of create a second account, which has permission to sign transactions on behalf of the keyless account. So this might be really useful for kind of onboarding users and then allowing them to upgrade their security after the fact. So you might onboard as a user and store a very small amount of funds in because you're testing things out, and have like a burner wallet or a hot wallet as the way you sign transactions. But as you accumulate assets and an identity and a transaction history, you might want to inherit or kind of implement a better standard of security for yourself. And instead of having to lose that account because it's associated with a hot wallet, what you can do is kind of create your new signer. Let's say it's a hardware wallet on a ledger device. Give that permission to act on behalf of the keyless account, which has your assets and your identity and your transaction history, and then boot off your old hot wallet and revoke the permission for that wallet to sign transactions. So you've kind of onboarded as a new user or something like that, and had a very low security. But as you've invested time and money into the ecosystem, you will kind of have the ability to upgrade your security and upgrade the level on which you're doing kind of self-custody to match, and you don't lose your original account. So that's an exciting primitive that I think would be cool for us or teams to try out.
So, but if you then use your hot wallet still for signing for that keyless wallet, you're still managing the seed phrase of that hot wallet, right? Or
yes, yeah. Okay. So, in that instance, you're managing with a seed phrase, but equally, that signing key you're using could be like a Web3 auth signing key, which is using a centralized service and social recovery. And that might be a really nice tool for onboarding users. So they don't need to manage a seed phrase right out the gate, but as they learn a little bit more about Web3 and kind of wanted to change that arrangement, they can do so. So yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff people can build with that.
Yeah, for sure. Many things to kind of try out and play around with. What do you think about? Did you ever think about like cross-chain swaps in the wallet? It's just like, I'm just thinking about the user experience in terms of that it can be maybe a bit clunky to bridge cryptocurrency from one parachain to the other. And then just you don't have the native one there to pay for gas. You need to swap it somehow, get maybe the gas sponsored for the swap. It's just, a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah. When you talk about usability and substrate and Polkadot, this is like one of the number one topics that people talk about. It's just kind of really cumbersome and like full of friction if you want to get a particular token on a particular network because you're interested in using some application. So yeah, cross-chain swaps is a really kind of let's say it's like a low-hanging fruit, or like it's a large problem that needs to be solved. And I think we're on the way of doing this inside of Talisman, inside of the web portal, where we've already integrated the ability to send your assets across chains. But what would be really kind of the blue chip solution is within the same interface to say, this is the asset I have, and this is the chain that it's on, and this is the asset I want, and this is the chain that I want it on. And then that series of cross-chain transfers and swaps is kind of bundled together for the user to execute in one go. So yeah, I can see us moving in that direction. And actually the upcoming exchange, I shouldn't probably call it an exchange, the upcoming like asset conversion palette on the asset hub system chain should help with just that pathfinding problem, where teams like us will need to find a path for the user. Say, I need to get from this asset and this chain to this other asset and this other chain. Which path of swaps and transfers do I need to do to get there? And the Asset Hub kind of DEX should really help with that, I think. So that's an exciting thing that should come out this year.
So for people who are not aware of this, that would be sort of like a system parachain or whatever, or to simplify it more, if you have the different clusters, each cluster is its own chain, you would like go through this joint hub and go to the other blockchain, sort of, right?
Perfect explanation. The Asset Hub was formerly State Mine, or a statement, if you're familiar with the older terminology. And they'll kind of launch a Uniswap V2 kind of style palette there, where you can list different trading pools and be able to route liquidity through those pools and bridge them to other parachains. So it should be a really good hub. Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where the user doesn't have to care on which chain he is, sort of?
Yeah. That was always the vision of Talisman, I think, where the first version of the wallet we ever submitted, even in like the early days where we were doing really simple account management practices, there was never a notion of which network you're currently on. Your Talisman wallet was always like a multi-chain wallet. MetaMask, you always specify, I'm currently using mainnet, or I'm currently using Guerli testnet, or something like that. But Talisman, it was always, you're just using Polkadot, and it doesn't matter where your assets are. The line item in your portfolio for DOT didn't necessarily say, here's one line item for DOT on the relay chain, and here's another balance for DOT on A star, for example. There's another balance for DOT on Moonbeam, for example. We've always just had, you have 10 dots, and they're spread across these chains. I think that's the portfolio management and the account management vision. Just moving your assets between chains and actually performing the action could be a little bit more seamless.
Right. So, for example, where you don't really care about, don't have to worry how, you just want to use the application and you have liquidity somewhere in some asset. And then that it's abstracted away how you get to the specific coin that needs to be paid on whatever chain for that interaction with that application, So you just have liquidity somewhere, and that can be used seamlessly, so to say.
Yeah, I think that should be a product, and we should put that in Talisman. Another consideration is which token am I paying gas fees in? You might want the ability for to get the asset on the other side to be seamless, but along the way you've got to pay all these gas fees. So kind of getting the user educated and maybe providing some tools for them to say, hey, my default gas token is DOT, at any time try and use DOT for gas, and then Talisman can kind of work behind the scenes to make sure that your preferred fee paying token is used. I think there are ways to give the user control whilst also making it seamless.
So it's converted to the gas token in the back end, so to say. You just say, I want my DOT balance to be used for whatever gas I pay wherever. And then it's converted in the background, sort of. Yeah,
it'll be dependent on what the chain has got kind of configured. Some chains will only accept a particular gas token. But I think for the majority of cases, you should be able to kind of use DOT or something similar to pay for gas.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Super exciting. Maybe we could just talk about the ecosystem. I mean, you've been building it in the ecosystem for a while. Obviously, there's opportunities here that you see. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. But I'm sure there's also challenges. So, what are your thoughts currently, on the ecosystem, or biggest challenges and opportunities as well?
Yeah, I mean, our thoughts on Polkadot, kind of the positive thoughts that we had when we first joined, is still present. Firstly, Polkadot seemed to be the most earnest and sincere attempt at providing a really scalable and versatile system of networks. Substrate is such a brilliant like software development kit, and the way in which Polkadot kind of first proposed this idea of like scalable parachains seemed like a really compelling vision. To say, actually, this seems like something that's on the drawing board for Ethereum 3.0. Just in terms of a network design perspective, it seemed like the right mix of like versatility and security. And that's still present. Obviously, it's a little bit different now. Agile core time is like the new way in which parachains or paras are going to be allocated computing power from the Polkadot network, but it's still kind of let's say like market leading in terms of like its ambition to create a really versatile and rich platform for just decentralized computing. And we're super pleased to build a wallet that interfaces with that, because we think it's a really excellent vision. And the other thing that we liked when we first joined Polkadot was like the temperament of the community. It seemed like a really honest and pragmatic set of builders. The way in which people kind of have interactions with each other on GitHub or in the forum or in person is a really nice place to work in. And that's something that it's kind of hard to have as a tangible thing, but it's something that attracted to us in Polkadot, and it's still there. But of course, it's not without its challenges, as you said. Getting the level of adoption that we see in an ecosystem like Ethereum is proven to be like really challenging. That's something that's like a shared problem between the core protocol builders, the parachain teams, and the application teams like Talisman. And it's like a multifaceted challenge of product and infrastructure and marketing and a community and 100 other things. So it's kind of challenging when you're kind of playing one role in that, which is to build a wallet. But I'm optimistic. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Speaking of that, we also had some projects expanding to other ecosystems as well, right? I talked about this with Bill last week as well, and got his thoughts on it. So you also obviously for a long time have been supporting EVM networks, not just the one parachains on Polkadot, but also like layer 2s on Ethereum and all that, which I thought was really cool as well, because I could have all that in one interface. Also stuff that I have I'm doing on Ethereum, not just the Polkadot stuff. So what do you think about that whole expansion topic? I was just thinking about it from a more economic standpoint or pragmatic standpoint, because I mean, you could argue there's still little product market fit across the whole crypto space yet. You have a lot of business models or protocols which are not yet profitable, so they're not sustainable yet. And so there's no significant operating cash flow coming in to cover costs. So until teams working in the space find ways to monetize this more effectively in the mid to long term, you still are at risk of running out of runway in the short term. So unless you find ways to secure more funding through grants or ecosystem funds, maybe the treasury in Polkadot, or investors, venture capital, whatever. So I was just wondering, do you think that contributes to the expansion of some teams? Is that also something that's relevant for Talisman? Because, I mean, okay, in Ethereum, you have more liquidity, more active users, more eyeballs sort of on it. You might think, okay, maybe that's more likely to bring in more cash flow in the short term, or maybe you're more likely to receive funding from VCs or whatever. These are just thoughts of mine. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. The reason we originally, let's say, expanded into Ethereum was to support the parachains that were EVM enabled. We had Moonbeam and A-Star and Akala all implemented the EVM. So in order to provide a wallet that actually let you use all of the parachains inside of Polkadot, it was necessary to add support for the Ethereum account type. And then while we were doing that, it kind of made sense to support those, like any networks that use that account type as well. So at the time, it seemed like, let's say, a necessary expansion.
Yeah.
But more and more, we've kind of become a little bit enamored with the Ethereum ecosystem, because it does seem to be like a melting pot of like iterative product development.
Right.
The parachains inside of Polkadot and the applications inside of Polkadot seem to be kind of largely focused on providing infrastructure for one another. Whereas you see a lot of the kind of boundary pushing app development inside of Ethereum. It's not to say that it's not in Polkadot, because there are amazing teams like HydraDX and Mangata and A-Star that are doing some great things. But I know the flavor of application in Polkadot seems to be more on the infrastructure side. Right. So yeah, it's tempting to kind of do a lot more Ethereum stuff, and I think we will one day. But I think that's coming from an economic place, because there are a lot of users there, but it's also coming from a place where just the style of application that we see Talisman being useful supporting is quite often in the Ethereum environment. You said that product market fit isn't something that a lot of crypto companies have found, and it's totally true. But there are some amazing products that have great product market fit and are super sustainable businesses, like a lot of the DeFi primitives. Uniswap is an amazing product, and it kind of stands up to the centralized order book exchange as an alternative to say we've got borderless, permissionless exchanging of assets, and that's the product, and it certainly fits the market. And that kind of application, I think, deserves a great interface to use, and for users to kind of custody their assets when they use that interface in an appropriate way, and that's kind of a role that Talisman can play. So yeah, expanding into a different market is like a mix of where the users are, where the funding is, and also like what your role or ambition is as a project. I suppose that's like one answer, but yeah, I think we have to play both sides a little bit at Talisman, where the Polkadot is still something with a lot of potential, and I love Substrate and I love Polkadot, and we've built a really amazing product that we're super proud of on that network. And abandoning it wouldn't be super wise either. So I think we'll just focus on what are the kinds of applications that we want to support, and what, the kind of users where we can add value as Talisman. And if we focus on that, then we will find our own product market fit.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, speaking of funding, do you want to talk about something called incentive pools? Yeah.
For those that don't know, we recently submitted a referendum on Polkadot for some funding, but it's very different to the like a conventional funding proposal that you've seen in the Polkadot Treasury recently, where most funding proposals are kind of structured in a way where you just say, here are the costs that I have, whether it's I'm running an event and this is the venue and this is the catering and something. Or these are the engineers that I have to build my software product, and this is the outcome that I'm going to get, just like this is what I'm going to make, whether I'm going to run this event or I'm going to make this software. And you just basically ask for the funds to cover your costs. We didn't necessarily think this was, firstly, the best thing for Talisman moving forward, because it's not how our team and business operates, and it's also something don't think it's best for the Polkadot ecosystem for all funding to be like this, because it just creates an ever-increasing cost base for the treasury, where people just get bigger and bigger teams and build larger software and just bill the costs straight to the treasury and kind of pass it off. Instead, we thought, how does Talisman operate internally? And we're a product company, and we look for the top line results. Number of transactions that have been facilitated via our software is one result. The number of funds that we've successfully managed to migrate into the Polkadot ecosystem from another ecosystem, that's another really important result. The number of DOT that we can kind of contribute to the staking rate from a Talisman product is another really important result. And it's not something that we think product companies should be judged on those kinds of results, not necessarily just saying, hey, we built the software, can we have the cash to cover the costs, please? We think it's healthy for there to be kind of results-based funding, where you can say, as a team, we achieved this outcome for the network and for the ecosystem. We got all of these funds from another ecosystem into this one, and that's what we achieved. And we should be rewarded in proportion to the result that you get. And so incentive pools is like the mechanism which we have kind of proposed as a way to do this. And we've also proposed an incentive pool for Talisman as like the first implementation of this mechanism, which is to say, Talisman have a great track record of getting DOT staked. So currently the ecosystem is below the staking rate, or the ideal staking rate. And the market forces and kind of the ecosystem, like the network specified goal, is we're below the network specified goal for the number of DOT staked. But Talisman is really great at getting people to stake DOT because they have a really nice product. So we thought, we should do a funding proposal that says, for each DOT, Talisman can kind of, in a reasonably trustless and provable way, say that we managed to get staked via our products. We'll get a reward kind of pro rata for each, like proportional for each DOT that was staked through our product. So that's kind of the general view of the incentive pools concept and where it came from, and also the implementation that we've proposed at the moment. But really the idea here is to say, let's move away from just funding based on whatever the costs were and move towards funding based on what the result actually is. And that way, I think it's a little bit more of a healthy ecosystem where teams are just not focused on doing like the treasury process in a really correct and thorough and like politically correct way, but actually teams are just absolutely laser focused on the result they're going to achieve. And you've pre-agreed that result with the treasury. You've said, hey, treasury, we're going to focus on getting funds bridged into the ecosystem. Do you want that result? And then if the treasury says thumbs up and approves the incentive pool, then the team that, like Talisman, can just focus squarely on getting that result, instead of kind of doing quite a time-consuming treasury process. So that's the I hope quick enough, but still quite lengthy explanation on incentive pools, because it's a nuanced and a complicated topic.
Yeah, no, I think that was good primer for it. I think it makes sense to have a results-based concepts to kind of like align the use incentives to align each other, so to say, with the treasury. I think the nuance will be around what results to choose, like what metrics there'll be, and how they'll influence how much incentive is paid out, so to say, per metric. So I think there might be some discussion around that. I think you proposed something like there'll be a base pay. I think you called it cash flow. So something that is then guaranteed once the proposal is passed. And then there's another component, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong and give us more more details on it. There's another component around people staking through your wallet in your nomination pool, staking DOT in the network, based on which the more DOT is staked through you, you'll gain a commission, so to say, for it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is I suppose like the very basic interaction, if you were to boil it down between Talisman and the Treasury, is Talisman has said to the Treasury,
right,
Treasury, we're really excellent at kind of getting DOT staked via our products. For each DOT that we can kind of provably get staked, so firstly, we'd like to work on this problem. If you think it's valuable for us to work on this problem and get this result for the network, then give us a green light. And then that's kind of the cash flow. It's like saying, here's some like stipend for the team to work on this problem, and kind of have your unfocused attention. And then for the result that we achieve as we're working on it, kind of have some proportional reward. It's actually very similar to a salesman's commission, where like a car salesman will have a very low base pay just to have them like working there at the shop and working on the task of selling cars. But really they're incentivized to get the result for the dealership, which is to sell cars. And that's really where the rewards come in properly. So it's not necessarily a new concept in like the world of economics. It's just a better way to make sure that the ecosystem actually benefits from a team's work, instead of just the team being like, I'm going to build this esoteric bit of software and I need $1 million. And then they go, okay. And then you build the esoteric bit of software and it doesn't, like, what actually happens, this is a way of only receiving funding if you get a really outsized result for the network.
Right. Cool. Yeah. And how would the payout work for, because it's like a regular one, it's not just a bulk payment at the beginning when a proposal is passed. How will that work with that, seeing that it's a decentralized treasury? How will that go?
So I would refer to the proposal to really understand this, but I believe it's the staking rewards. So the pool kind of is created and there is a rewards pool that's for the commission. But what you can do in Polkadot is you can stake dots and earn yield on that. And the staking rewards from the rewards pool is like, let's say the small salary that a salesman takes to be at the job.
Okay. So would you adjust the commission for your nomination pool in order to?
This is separate to the nomination pools that we run.
Okay.
Talisman runs nomination pools because we have an interface for one-click staking, and we wanted to make sure that there were some pools that were run in a really professional and high-touch way, so that any users of Talisman have at least the Talisman option to use for their staking choice. And that's what we do, and lots of people have trusted us with their funds in this high-touch pool that we're running. But the result for the network is actually just, it doesn't matter which pool funds go into. We're just getting it staked for the network. So it's a little bit separate to the nomination pool that we run. It's a separate amount.
Right, but how is that amount paid out from the treasury to you based on reaching the goals of like per dot contributed to the nomination pool? You know what I mean?
Oh, that's decided by curators. So
okay.
Yeah. So in the same way that a bounty has curators, like an incentive pool has curators, and Talisman will have to submit a lot of the metrics that we use for like our product development process anyways, like page views, transaction metrics, number of accounts connected, things like that. Whatever has been like if a user has opted into analytics, then we can retrieve that information. We can submit that as a way to, in a reasonably provable way, say this dot was contributed to the pool via our product, and it was a real user. It wasn't us like kind of conning the treasury and contributing our own DOT or something like that. And we'll submit that along with all of the like record of the work we've done. So that, it's important for there to be some accountability for us to say, we're really working on this problem, we're really working hard, and we can, show code, internal kind of product development documents and things like that. So that like bundle of information can be submitted, and the bounty curators can go over that and say, it seems like via their work and via their product, Talisman has managed to get 100 DOT contributed to staking in this period of time, and we can calculate the reward based on that.
Got it. So it's the bounty curators who assess the delivery, so to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. All right. I'm excited to see where that goes, and if that'll be something what the discussion around it will be. Have you heard already? Like, have you had discussions already? Or?
Yeah, it's basically all we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. And the feedback around incentive pools as a concept and results-based funding as a concept is kind of overwhelmingly positive. I think it's really hit a nerve with the ecosystem to say, actually, this is a kind of a much better way of aligning incentives. And kind of regardless of exactly how this kind of Genesis incentive pool proposal is going to go, I think, I'll be optimistic that we see some shift in the way treasury proposals are conducted as a result of this discourse. And we'll keep trying to get results-based funding implemented because, that's we think it's a healthier mechanism for everybody to run on. It doesn't necessarily say the old mechanism's totally terrible and it should never exist, because there are some products that you need to just say, look, browser embodied light clients are really important. That just needs to be funded. It's like a critical thing. And the current funding method is good for that. But for teams that are in the ecosystem that are really trying to increase the adoption of Polkadot, especially, you should be measuring their success by what adoption they get in Polkadot, the number of transactions they facilitate, the number of funds that it's an absolute no-brainer. It's really unhealthy if we don't have it.
Agreed. And sometimes it's a bit tricky to find to be able to have a metric where you can really attribute it to that result, what you did, and it's tricky to kind of do that results based.
I can see why it hasn't been proposed kind of so far, because it is a tricky problem. And fortunately we have like a track record of getting DOT contributed to staking, and we have a lot of documents and like analytics that we can kind of surface. But if you're like a new team, then or like just in a different situation, it might be more difficult to kind of put together a proposal like this.
Yeah, especially as a wallet, it's kind of like you are kind of the gateway of adoption, so it's more directly associated, and you can kind of like come up with a concept like that nicely, I think. Hopefully all the wallets move down this road. I'd really like to see that. Really like to see that happen. Lovely.
Yeah.
Cool. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, this is unrelated to the treasury, to the funding, is what do you think about MetaMask snaps? Maybe you could give us a short introduction what that is, and sort of how you view that maybe from a competitive standpoint.
So maybe users or listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure MetaMask snaps started as something called the MetaMask extensibility protocol in like 2021 or something, where they released a blog post and they said, the future direction of MetaMask is to basically allow other developers to build plugins for MetaMask, and that like augments the wallet experience. So instead of MetaMask development team kind of working on all of the features under the sun and then having a bit of a Frankenstein wallet, you can kind of enable plugins, and then users can Frankenstein their own wallet if they want support for a particular network, or they want social recovery, or they want ZK privacy, then they can install the plugin for that. I think it's great. To be honest, it reminds me of browser extensions in a little bit of a way, where you can customize your browser experience by installing an extension. You can customize your wallet experience by installing a MetaMask snap. As a general statement, I think it's a really good step forward for Web3 and for wallets. For MetaMask specifically, it'll be interesting to see if a snap gets really popular. Let's say like a particular social recovery snap becomes like a really popular thing to install. It almost becomes default and everyone just has it. Do they integrate that natively inside of their product, or and kind of inherit that feature themselves?
Is that the same? Is that the same topic of like the state and Polkadot adopting features that some parachains have?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's a perfect analogy.
All right.
Only because we haven't really seen a parachain which is like absolutely a must-have. But yeah, that's probably another controversial topic as these system chains like implementing all these functionality that parachains have and making them like just making the environment more competitive or something like that. Similar, but I think snaps are great. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they go.
But in terms of these snaps, so just for a viewer, I think you could, for example, have a Polkadot module or snap, so to say, right, where you can then carry out transactions on Polkadot through MetaMask. So you can use MetaMask for Polkadot, which you usually can't. Right?
That already exists, I think. Snaps have been in like development mode for like well over a year, actually. Okay. And previously you had to like get a development version of MetaMask or something like that, and then install the snap manually.
Right.
But there is, I guess there's two things on that. Firstly, snaps are kind of coming out of development mode, and they'll be integrated more natively into the product for everybody to use. There has been a Polkadot like substrate snap for a while, where that adds the ability to have a substrate key pair and sign substrate transactions into MetaMask, which is great for Polkadot.
Right. So just wondering, because obviously MetaMask is the wallet that has the largest market share. Could this then lead to further consolidation? Could users move away from other wallets to MetaMask? Is that a risk for Talisman, or is that not really comparable?
It's definitely comparable because it's like a similar market. I suppose it depends where the users are coming from. If these users were like always MetaMask users, then it suddenly seems like a more seamless operation to just like add a snap and then get started in Polkadot than having to migrate to a whole new wallet. But if these are users that have come through the substrate ecosystem via Talisman, then they'll always be Talisman users, I think. So it's certainly relevant, and I'll be interested to see how it goes. But it's only a positive thing for Polkadot. I think it's like a rising tide lifts all the boats type of thing, where a possible like scenario is a user onboards into Polkadot via a MetaMask snap, because that's a really like simple, easy one-step action. But that snap is like limited in its functionality, right? It's quite a simple plugin. And if they wanted to lean into Polkadot a little bit more, maybe have some of the transaction verification stuff we have inside of Talisman, or use like a cross-chain swaps thing, then they can migrate to like a fully fledged substrate wallet. That's like a shooting the breeze possible scenario of what could happen, but definitely a positive thing for Polkadot, I think, to have native MetaMask support, or like snap MetaMask support. All right. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. So generally a net positive for the ecosystem, actually. Yeah. I don't think anyone's complaining or like should complain, because it's such a huge product to MetaMask.
All right, cool. Sweet. Wow, we covered a lot of stuff right now. I just say, is there anything else you want to mention, talk about, or are there any final thoughts you have that you want to share?
I think we covered everything. I would maybe reiterate, try out Talisman and check out the new account management experience when it's out. And if you're interested in like decentralized governance and funding models, of course, check out the incentive pools proposal because at the very least, it's pretty intellectually interesting.
Right, yeah. Great. And we'll put the link to Talisman in the show notes so you can find it there. And if you're completely new to the Polkadot ecosystem, we are also using Talisman. I told you, Jonathan, in our e-learning platform. But that one's in German only at the moment. So if you're a German speaker and new to Polkadot, you can also kind of learn on our website how to do send dot, stake, and all of that through Talisman. So check that out as well. Thank you, Jonathan. That was a very interesting conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to using these features that you're rolling out. And thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to chat, and Dankeschön and cheers.
Very good. Cheers.